Welcome to the Propagation Station with me, Plant Vibrations, and here we're going to talk about taking some tip cuttings to multiply the plant life in your garden. One of the coolest things about plants is that they have the ability to just increase themselves exponentially if you, the gardener, know a couple key things in order to do that. Another cool thing is they are a cinch to share with your friends, to share with your other garden buddies. And that's why one of the reasons why gardeners it's a tight-knit community, because we're always sharing plants, we're always sharing our knowledge. And I have these tip cuttings that my good friend Phil shared with me about 10 days ago. And what I have here is Persicaria Red Dragon. Now this is different than some of the other Persicarias that are kind of like the ground covers. This is more of a shrubby Persicaria and it has this gorgeous burgundy foliage. Now, when it comes to taking tip cuttings, the thing about what is a tip cutting? Imagine right now it's summertime and you can tell I'm in my tank top, my summertime tank top. And while your plants are actively growing, you can start to see kind of along those branches the new growth. That new growth, that baby fresh growth, that's what we want. That's what we want to take a snipping of to start our new cuttings. And because they're at like the end of those branches, they're like the tip of that branch. That's why we call them tip cuttings. Now, when it comes to taking a tip cutting, a kind of easy rule of thumb is you want to take a cutting that is about 6 inches long. That's kind of a good measurement to take. And generally, when we're taking our cuttings, we want to get as many leaf nodes in those cuttings as possible. And well, let me show you why. Okay, so I have these two beautiful cuttings that I started about 10 days ago. My friend Phil gave them to me 10 days ago. And what he did, he simply just cut this right off of the shrub. Now let me show you exactly what's so important about the leaf nodes. Okay, so the leaf nodes is where actually the new fresh roots are going to come out. So you can see when we cut this, there used to be a leaf here and a leaf there. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to remove those leaves, because when we're putting it into the water, you don't want to, for one, you don't want to have leaves in the water. For two, having that open leaf node is going to allow it to create roots. So ideally, I would have, 1, 2, 3, maybe even 4 leaf nodes in that water creating roots. Unfortunately, I only have the one, but that's okay. That just means I'm going to have to be a little bit more careful. I'm going to have to be a little bit more patient with it and baby it a little bit longer. Also, I'm moving out of this house next, like in a couple days. So if I weren't moving, I would allow these to remain in this water for another 2 to 3 weeks to create even bigger roots. But since I don't have time, I'm gonna pot them up now and it'll be fine. It just means I'm gonna have to be a little bit more careful, a little bit more watchful as to what's going on. Okay, so now that I have my cuttings with the roots already growing, we're gonna transfer them into some soil. So I have this beautiful ceramic pot, nice and small, and when we're you never want to transfer cuttings like this into like a big old pot, because it's just, there's too many variables. When you have a small pot, this is great. You can kind of hone in on the variables that you need to make sure are there. And once they've started to grow a little bit more, that's when you transfer it to the next size pot or into the garden, whatever you may want to be doing. Now this container has no holes in the bottom, which is great for this occasion, because when we're starting these new baby cuttings, we need to make sure that the soil remains moist the entire time, not sopping wet, but not dried for a prolonged period of time. Even if they're dry for like 24, 36 hours, that may cause your baby plants to totally dry out and die. And that would waste that 3 weeks, that month, 2 months, 3 months that you had been trying to create that new plant, and you let it dry out for 36 hours and it died. So by keeping the container with no holes in the bottom, you're going to help to reduce the amount of transpiration that occurs or evaporation, that occurs out of the container. Okay, so before I transfer my cuttings into the pot, what I like to do, I like to just give my container some water. It's going to make it easier for me to actually transfer the cuttings into the soil, and it's going to help me to make sure that I'm using my handy dandy fork, and it's going to help me to ensure that all of the soil is wet before I actually put the cuttings in. So I'm just mixing it around, ensuring that all of the soil is nice and moist, but not too soppy. All right, I think that looks pretty good. It looks like brownie batter, to be honest. What do you think? It looks like brownie batter, and that's exactly what we want. Okay. So now I'm going to take my fork. I'm going to just kind of open a little hole in here. And I'm actually going to take my fork and kind of open that hole all the way until you hear that? I'm hitting the bottom of the pot. For a pot this size, that's great because these cuttings, will fit in there perfectly. And it doesn't matter if I take this cutting and I stick it all the way down and the actual bottom touches that bottom of the soil, or touches the bottom of the container, because you're not going to get roots out of the actual bottom here. They're only going to come out of this leaf, out of that old leaf node. So it's okay if it's actually touching the bottom. So take it and just try to, if you can, try to spread those roots out a little bit. If it's too challenging, it's not the end of the world. Okay. So I got one. Let's do the other one. And two. Okay, now these look pretty good. Now the thing is, you remember, there weren't that many roots. And if you guys remember from Plant Science 101, the way that a plant actually works is, yes, it absorbs the sunlight through the foliage, and by absorbing that sunlight through the foliage, it's going to feed the plant. It uses photosynthesis to change that light energy into sugar energy, and that's going to allow for more roots to grow. And alternatively, it's the roots that absorb water and that transfers that through the stems and keeps the foliage hydrated. So you have to have that balance of roots and foliage. If there's not enough roots to provide moisture to those leaves, it's bad because it's going to dry out. It's not going to work the way that you want to. And you saw those roots, there weren't that many, but there's quite a lot of foliage on here. So what am I going to do? I am actually going to take some sharp scissors and I'm going to just literally cut these leaves in half. And what that helps is it basically takes a lot of stress off of your roots and off of that plant as you're trying to get it started. And because, well, what I'm growing right now, this is going to be a vigorous perennial in time. It will not matter that some of these leaves, I'm not going to remember that there's cut leaves here in 6 months. They will be totally done with, and a whole flush of new fresh growth will occur. Now what I have here is a beautiful little plant that is ready to be put outside. I'm not going to put it out in the full hot sun. I'm going to kind of like shelter it behind another couple of containers, but I still want it to get some fresh sunlight, and that is what, absorbing that sun, it's going to help more roots grow. Once you have the roots starting to grow, soon enough, maybe in 6 weeks, you'll start to see new fresh growth occur. And once you see that new fresh growth occurring, that means you did it right. That means good job, green thumb is growing. And it's really as easy as that. It's propagation, it's fun, it's super easy. You can share with your friends, share with your family. The only thing that's hard for a lot of us is the patience. And because plants are slow, just like life is slow, plants are very slow. If you can just always be doing something new in your garden, you won't be thinking about, oh, I've been propagating this plant for the last 6 months, because you'll have a bunch of different plants in the works. And it's highly rewarding. Once this starts growing, maybe I'll keep it, maybe I'll give it as a gift, maybe I'll divide it, give some to myself, give some to a friend. Anyways, there's lots to do with plants, and that's why we love them. Anyways, I'm Devin Wallin. Welcome to my propagation station with me, Plant Vibrations. Don't forget to subscribe. Check out all of my other videos and share with your friends and all the other garden lovers out there. I'll catch you later.